Good morning. It's chilly 25 degrees here in Loveland, Ohio. My name's Don Runker. I'm a structural engineer. Been practicing for about 36 years, 26 of those in the residential market. We're here today to introduce to you a new construction product we believe will revolutionize the way wood frame decks are attached and connected to wood framed residential structures and wood framed commercial structures. The name of our product is DeckStruc, and it's a two-part steel bracket system that bolts from the inside of the structure and from the outside. And we've spent the last close to 2 years in design and engineering and manufacturing and development and testing before we got to this point. The reason we started this process is the building code has evolved over the years, primarily because when there is a failure that you hear about on the radio or on TV, it is nearly always a failure of the connection of the deck to the main structure. And our product is intended to provide a substantial and significant improvement on that, and in response to the building code, which has gotten more restrictive over the years because of all those failures. So it's, we believe, a superior product to what's on the market, and we'd like to demonstrate an installation to you today to show you both the engineering advantages and the construction advantages and try to promote our product. Okay, so this is the interior bracket. It's composed of a steel channel, two steel wing angles that are shop welded to the channel, and they have bolts in them or holes in them where we bolt into the floor joist on each side, and then two 5/8" bolts that are shop welded on the back side to the channel, and we will drill 2 holes through the band board to insert these through, and this is where the outer bracket will attach to the inner bracket through these bolts. On the inside, there's a single hole that's intended for a lag bolt to be installed down through the bracket into the double top plate of the wall, and again, we'll show that in person or up close during the installation. This is the installation of the inner piece of the bracket, and the first step is to put the bracket on top of the double top plate so you can mark the holes in the band board for the 1-inch diameter holes, and pointing with my laser pointer where the 2 bolts are. And one of the construction advantages of this is by resting the bracket on the top plate, it guarantees that the deck framing and ledger will be parallel to and level with the floor structure, because you're relying on the bracket resting on the double top plate. So it's a built-in advantage in terms of guaranteeing that your deck will be level and consistent in its relationship to the inner floor. So now we're going to drill the 1-inch diameter holes through the band board. Okay, so now we're finishing drilling the 1-inch holes through the band board. And the next step is to install the bracket through the holes and make sure that it sits flush on top of the double wall plate. Okay? And then the next step, and this is a key engineering feature here, is the 2 steel wing angles and the bolts that go into the joist are what provides this bracket with the superior load capacity, and we believe this is a huge advantage over any of the products on the market that we've seen. So now we're going to drill the holes through the side joists so we can install the 5/8" bolts through the wing angles. So now we're going to install the 5/8" carriage bolts through the wing angles into the joist on each side. And these brackets can be set up for a joist spacing of 16 inches on center or 12 inches on center, and a variation of that if you have TJI floor joist. We tested a 19.2 inch joist spacing for some of the production built homes in the area. So we've accounted for what we believe are most of the possibilities in terms of joist size, joist spacing, joist type. Now we're tightening the carriage bolts on each side. The bracket is fabricated with about a 1/4 inch tolerance. So when we tighten the bolts down, it draws the leg of the angle flush with the face of the joist. So the last piece to install is a lag bolt through the bottom of the channel into the double plate. It requires a 1/2 inch drill bit, and that will complete the installation of the inside component of the bracket. Altogether, maybe 5 minutes to install the bracket, including drilling the holes. So one of the installation advantages is, even though the bolts are only 5/8 inch diameter, we drilled 1 inch diameter holes through the band board, and that's for ease of alignment and construction. And we actually drilled oversized holes during the testing process to make sure that we weren't relying on the bolt being in a tight hole. So that's kind of an inherent construction advantage, and it's also been accounted for in the testing. So that completes the installation of the interior portion of the bracket, the 2 bolts into the joist, the single bolt into the double top plate. Altogether, drilling the holes, about 5 minutes of installation per bracket. And what we believe is a huge advantage of this is that with the completion of the inside bracket, the builder would be free to finish and insulate the basement space independent of his construction sequence on the exterior. He doesn't have to wait for the brick mason. He can proceed with all of that. So we perceive that as a huge scheduling advantage for production built homes, in that they are so schedule driven, it allows him some flexibility to complete interior work while he's waiting for the exterior brick masonry. Okay, so we moved to the exterior portion of the installation, and I'd like to point out this point that when we load tested at the University of Kentucky, we were anticipating a capacity of about 1,600 pounds. It ended up testing at about 8,800 pounds per bracket, and we currently list the capacity, the working load capacity, at 2,000 pounds per bracket. So what that means is, on a residential deck, you could use spacings for the bracket of anywhere from 4 feet to 5'4" on center. But with that 2,000 pound capacity, it would also have commercial deck loading application with a much higher commercial live load that's required. So the spacing would be smaller than 4 feet, but it would be suitable for a commercial application. Okay, so the next step is to fit the outer bracket to the 2 threaded bolts that were part of the inner bracket, and then mark the 2 lower holes, and those are for lag bolts that are installed into the double top plate of the wall. So from an engineering point of view, the load transfer is through all 4 bolts. The upper 2 through the steel bracket and through the band board, the lower 2 in direct shear into the double top plate. And the key engineering component of this is the ability to resist the torsion, the tendency for the bracket to rotate off of the main structure, and that's resisted by the upper bolts, the steel inner bracket, and the 2 wing angles and their bolts into the floor joists. So now we'll drill the holes for the 2 lower bolts. So once the lower holes are drilled, we'll reinstall the exterior bracket. And this process can happen well in advance of the brick being installed on the home or the commercial structure, or just before the brick installation. It's not either weather sensitive or schedule sensitive. It's at the convenience of the builder. The other thing to point out is, compared to traditional through bolting applications for ledger boards, there's way fewer penetrations through the envelope of the building. In this case, it's 4 bolts every bracket, so 4 bolts every 4 foot to 5 foot 4 inches on center. And this also allows you to flash along the top and sides of the bracket to prevent water intrusion. We would recommend you leave the bottom open so that any condensation or moisture can weep out. But we believe this to be far superior to traditional method of through bolting with a ledger board. So now we install the 2 lower lag bolts. And again, I'm pointing out it's a single person operation here. It doesn't require 2 people. And it is self-leveling, so no need for 2 carpenters to hold the ledger board level. It's all accounted for in the design of the bracket and the installation. Another point is to point out here is that all of the tightening of the bolts is done only from the exterior. No need to have a second person on the inside as part of the tightening process. So the exterior bracket, probably another 5 minutes per bracket installation. So perhaps 10 minutes per bracket total for interior and exterior portions. So one final point is we can manufacture the brackets for a variety of conditions, whether the exterior deck is flush with the interior floor or a step-down condition, in case you want to put a tile finish or some other finish on top of the deck. So the bracket is adaptable to a variety of step-down conditions and dimensions. Okay, the last thing we'd like to show you is what the installation looks like if you're using an engineered floor joist instead of conventional 2x lumber. And this is a TJI series with sawn lumber cords and an OSB web. And this is a standard bracket set up for a 19.2 inch traditional joist spacing. So to compensate for the varying width here and the inherent weakness of the webs of the TJI, this installation requires a OSB spacer on the inside as well as a piece of 2x blocking on the exterior side of the bracket. All the bolting, both through the joist and into the double plate, is still the exact same as if you're using conventional lumber. So the exterior version or view of this is, here's the LSL band board that mates up with the engineered floor joist, a fiber board insulation. Here's the standard exterior bracket, and what we couldn't show you out on the job site is this is the mounting for the pressure treated ledger. Here's the bearing plate on the bottom that allows you to set the ledger board and mark the bolt locations, and it also guarantees that your ledger is parallel and follows the interior floor elevation. But from this point out, the installation is entirely the same as a conventional framed floor.